amidst so much controversy, the president of the Republic of Russia managed to convene several African leaders, including our own president, His Excellency Yoweri Museveni, who was there in participation, in person, and flanked with a delegation from Uganda, including cabinet ministers, among other state and government officials. Well, we also saw bilateral talks being held between Kremlin and Kampala, and we are interested to discuss and unpack what is there for Uganda in this conference, but also the broader discussion that this conference happened last year, it has happened again this year. Is it becoming a ritual, or in fact there are substantive takeaways from this very powerful convening? Well, to put all this into perspective, viewers, is a panel of distinguished young people. Two of them are already here with us in studio. We hope that the other two shall join us along the way. But well, let's get rolling with these two, and I'll just introduce them in a split second. To my immediate left is a student of law at Makerere University, the prestigious Makerere University. Tracy Lynn Ankunda is the name. Tracy, we are happy to have you.
Thank you, Kidega.
How do you feel? You had chucked us.
No, I did not chat to you. I feel very humbled to be once again part of this great discussion. And I hope we believe that by the end of this, we shall have unpacked a lot of issues within this concept of Russia and African Summit. Yeah,
I hope so as well. If you followed the 89th Makerere University Guild elections, then the name Oremo Hilario Dwe sounds a bell into your ears. Well, today we have the former Guild presidential candidate for Makerere University Students Guild, and also the co-founder of the Mark Bench. We are happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much, comrade and Ladit, Ladit Kidega. I am very honored to come back here to Civic Space and this very particular show, the Youth Roundtable. Looking forward to a meaningful conversation this morning with you and my very good sister from Bushenyi, Tracy Lynn.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Since you already have the microphone, let's just begin right away. just your overview of this summit. How different is it from last year? But also because we saw the interim president of Burkina Faso in attendance. We saw the Wagner Group leader making his first public appearance. But I mean, those are just other factors that we could look at. But your general observation and comments.
Okay, first and foremost, I think before even talking about the conference that happened in St. Petersburg this week, very important for us to note is that Russia as a country for so long has been a very good friend to the African continent. You'll agree with me that whereas the European countries in the early 90s and late 80s were clamoring to take over the African countries, Russia did not participate in capturing the African continent. And even in the early 90s, around 1940s, crossing to that time when the African continent was struggling to liberate themselves, I think it was greatly Russia that worked so hard, supported African countries from the Cape to Cairo, from Mombasa to Port Harcourt, across the African continent. Russia was giving a lot of support to African countries to see that they liberate themselves. They extended a lot of military support, a lot of financial support, a lot of Ugandan sons, a lot of Egyptian sons and daughters, a lot of South Africans went to Russia to get training in different fields so that they could come and start constructing a baby that had liberated itself in the 1960s and 70s. I think by 1975, that's when the latest countries were getting their independence. Now, talking about the summit that our very own president went to attend, the Russia-Africa Summit, I think very important to note is that this is the summit that brings together African countries and then other countries basically to share opportunities within themselves. Because if you followed what the president of Uganda, for example, was talking about, he was trying to expose the opportunities in Uganda. he was attracting, drawing the attention of the Russian government to, to interest themselves in opportunities in Uganda in oil and gas, in the agriculture sector, because
And tourism.
yes, tourism. We talked about, Uganda's coffee being exported to, European countries and maybe in the States when they are not processed, when they are raw materials. And one thing he condemned was the aspect of exporting African products as raw materials. So for me, what we're waiting to see, what I'm waiting to see is basically seeing action out of this conference, because it happened last year. The first one happened in 2022, and I can tell you these are the very things that were discussed. Opportunities were discussed, exchange of support and building that bilateral, cooperation between these countries. Of course, Russia has been a good friend to Uganda. That one everyone knows, and many other African countries. But in terms of trade, I think we are still ferrying our coffee, which is not processed. It comes back to Uganda as Nefkef, and people buy this coffee, expensively. People are spending exorbitant resources in acquiring our very own resources. We produce our coffee, they take it, they process it, and we buy it hugely. Our tourism industry is still struggling. And these engagements have not just happened in Russia, also in the past in other countries. A lot of, exchange of opportunity engagements have been taking place, but up to now, our tourism is shooting way below its belt. We have a lot of tourism potential which is not exploited. So I think we need to give them, time for us before we can go ahead to make conclusions. But these conversations, these engagements, these conferences have been taking place, and I don't know if you saw how recently the president of Kenya was very bitter when he was.
By the way, speaking of which, was he in attendance? I didn't see Kenya as a republic.
The Kenyan president wasn't there, and it's
neither,
something.
Neither was the Tanzanian president.
Exactly, and it is something is
neither was Kagame.
Yes.
Of Rwanda. Oh, interesting.
President Ruto has come out to start, decampaigning those diplomatic engagements. You call, African presidents, you call all of them, you call African presidents, you want to host 40 African presidents in one day, in 2 days. What meaningful conversations are you going to have with them? You give a president from Uganda 40 minutes. In fact, 40 minutes are too much. Some are given 5 minutes to make deliberations on behalf of a full country and talk about the economy.
So what does that say for the global, power shift? Are these countries trying to rebuild sort of a bipolar system again? Because if you saw what the USA did, I think, was it last year or this year? Last year.
Yes.
Where this year actually, where USA convened again African countries. Now we are seeing Russia. Are we going back to the bipolar system where the two, extreme ends are struggling for this, virgin territory with so much opportunity like
now that is what you should expect, because you see, it is not out of sympathy that Russia is going to invite Uganda to St. Petersburg. It is not out of goodwill. You see, everyone invests with an interest.
There is a quid pro quo, something
exactly.
for something.
When UN was formed, and then the two powers emerged, that the confronting blocks right now, we have United States of America and the USSR, that is Russia. So when Russia calls us, it does not, of course, augur well with the United States of America. You know that these people are always competing for loyalty and attention from African countries. Yeah. And that can also explain the very many coups you've been seeing happening in the African continent. These coups are always fueled by these two powers because they're struggling for attention. But of course, in the end, somehow the African countries can benefit. So we are heading back to the Cold War politics, where United States of America will be clamoring for, Uganda's attention. Russia is clamoring for Uganda's attention. But also, you see, these events are happening at a time where Uganda's relationship, most of the African countries are, are getting out of the books of the United States. You've seen now the US has been releasing a lot of cancellation of visas, statements, sanctions against Ugandan government officials. So the implication on Uganda is basically that the relationship between Uganda and the United States of America is not going to remain the same. Because you know very well that also recently Russia, pulled out a law against the LGBT community in Russia. Just the same path Uganda followed that, saw a lot of Ugandan government officials sanctioned from going to the United States of America. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Thank you very much, Ndugu. Very fantastic submission. Lynn, before I bring you in, our viewers, you have been joined by the other two guests that I promised you who would be joining us on this panel discussion. And just to introduce them to you is Hafashimana Asimwe, all the way from the Kisoro District Youth Council, as well as former Secretary for National Affairs of ONSA. Ndugu, karibuni.
Asante sana. Yeah. Hello viewers, my name is Hafashimana Asimwe. Just like Ndugu and the comrade Chitega just put it forward. I come from Chisoro, that's the most important thing. And yeah, one of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We're happy to have you. Next to Asimwe is Darren Namatovu. Darren is a human rights defender, but also the founder of the Phoenix Children Foundation. Darren, it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah. All right.
I'm excited.
Thank you. Lynn, I mean, you had our OO's evaluation of that summit. Whereas he holds a beacon of hope, he also has some reservations about whether some of these meetings get to actualize what they really discuss. I don't know, what do you make of this particular summit?
Well, to begin with, I want to say that Africa as a continent, we've been struggling with a lot. And when you look at the theme of the summit, which is the idea on peace, security, and development, you put so much into question in terms of what Africa wants to achieve in terms of, let's say, trade, because when you look at the economy, let's say, of Africa, it has a GDP of $2.7 trillion US. And this trillion, to my surprise, of only Africa, when you look at it in terms of, there are some continents, actually there are some countries that have the same, higher than this GDP as individual countries. Look at places like Japan and Germany. So if a whole entire Africa that has a population of around 1.3 billion people has such a smaller ratio of the GDP, then it shows you that there is quite a lot that Africa believes they should work on. Now, Africa, we are struggling, say, with poverty, and we are aiming at how best do we develop ourselves. And so necessarily that we are trying to look on who actually can help us. It goes back to the question of interest. Who actually can help us?
Should we help ourselves? Should we always be looking for help from elsewhere?
We have done so, but trust me, Kidega, that sometimes when you look at SDG number 17 on partnerships, we feel like also collaboration kind of helps us to build a more formidable, prosperous in the times to come. So basing on the idea that we are struggling with poverty, that is one. That is why you see that in the summit itself, Putin gives opportunity to give some grains to some of the 5 countries in Africa that are really badly off in terms of food security and infrastructure as well. And then also
and how peculiar is that? Because Africa holds the world's largest arable land.
Yes.
How do we find ourselves lacking agricultural produce?
Getting grains from Russia.
From Russia.
Yes. Whereas it is a fact.
Yes.
Could you help us dig deeper into it?
I think one of the issues we are facing as Africa is the fact that some of the African countries are seeing division within ourselves. When you look at, let's say, even in regards to this summit, you have some countries taking this side and you have some other countries taking the other side. And so we have countries within us that actually are not willing to even help their neighbors. And so sometimes because of the interests that maybe Russia could have within us as countries, it takes on the initiative to come and look out for us. But then it helps.
So Russia is a caring big brother sort of.
Because they have the interests.
African.
You have to put in mind that they have interests at the back of their mind. And so to me, it seems like For example, when you look at Uganda, the president of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Museveni, rightly put it that coffee industry, it produces or it collects around 460 billion from all over the world. But what is the amount that is given to the actual producers? For example, in Africa, or the actual producers actually have around they have around 2.6 billion that they get from that 460 billion. Yet Africa is the largest country that gives up producers in terms of coffee. And when you zero it Uganda itself, it's around 800 million. Uganda gets 108 million out of the 460 billion. This is an amount that should be actually more benefiting the African continent. So when Uganda and other countries say involved in such conversations, these are platforms of negotiations. These are platforms where people are able to give in their views and they say, you see this and this is not being done right. For example, the president of Burkina Faso was able to raise a very important issue on human rights and how they do not want Westernization or Russia to take them as beggars. The same as Cyril Ramaphosa, that you see, we are not here as beggars. If we are saying you're calling us that you're actually going to help us in this, so we want this, so can we have it? Because maybe you also feel you need us. And then also the idea that we are trying to open up with trade in Africa itself alone, but then also we can't forego the fact that we are working on export and getting revenue. So quite a number of issues. However, some of the presidents did not show up. And one of the comments the president of Sudan said is that that these are deadly times to be converging in meetings, for example, of countries and continents that are at war with others. For example, that you cannot have a summit right now of Uganda, Ukraine, or you cannot. Some of them didn't find it really pertinent to involve in such summits. That at this scrambling stage, it is not, that should not be the remedy out. Uganda or Africa itself, yes, in the long run, we have to understand the fact that this is a time for you to take a decision, where it is a time of wrong or right. So, and you cannot fail to take a decision in terms of aggression, because we are trying to fight as society and together, because we are looking at the idea of peace. Now, when you look at peace and development nexus, that without security, your development also has a lot of loopholes. And without development, then security itself is also put into question. So there are quite a number of many challenges that we face with this summit. But then also, like my brother said, hope should not die.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the evaluation, and I want to bring in Afasha. Afasha, I know you for your very strong Pan-African ideals, and if you look at this summit, it comes at the backdrop where Russia is committing acts of aggression against another sovereign state, Ukraine. Do you think that the participation of African leaders or African states in this summit could be misinterpreted as them allying with Russia and therefore, condoning what Russia is doing in Ukraine? Because I thought that, at this point in time, with what Russia is doing, the world would come up in defiance, and sort of don't even give them a chance to, have any platform. So do you think that this participation could be, one, misinterpreted, but two, how do you interpret the other African countries that did not participate? Like in East Africa, only Uganda was there.
Thank you. You might recall that there is a time when President Museveni fell sick, not very many months ago.
True.
And shortly after that, that's when Russia calls upon African countries to go and dialogue. Of course, you look at that in terms of diplomacy, but of course, which diplomacy is also sometimes interpreted in its own way. In the past recent, you have had statements like, this is an African continent that is so much endowed with resources, with good people, with black people, intelligent, things of the sort. Uganda's participation and the African countries that went to Russia, of course, it is a conclusion that these African countries are lying with Russia. You might recall that Uganda itself might not have much interest within China because it has nothing much to get from China in terms of security. So if, for example, Uganda and other African countries have opted to join Russia at St. Petersburg, that is a clear interpretation that it is supporting Russia. So it has come out to say we are actually supporting this, in my own view. You might recall that we have, of course, the USSR bloc, then we also have the NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, all those. So if the countries that are part of the NATO, because initially it is the NATO states that are trying to ensure that they absorb Ukraine on their side.
True.
But also Russia wants to say, no, actually this state has been part of us historically. So that means that countries like Germany, countries like UK, the US, Belgium, Bulgaria, all those countries are now claiming that now Uganda and other African countries that have been part of Russia in the recent visit, they are now saying we are part of Russia. That means issues to do with relationships with these other countries on side of the NATO are saying these people are not part of us. So in the African view, you are also clear about these other African countries that were not able to join. Of course, for reasons known to these African countries, they said, no, let us not be part of this. But maybe in the background, there is what they also want to achieve in other countries, especially the superpowers of the US and the UK. That means that looking at an Africa that we want to craft, especially in the few years to come, beginning from today, I just wanted to add a voice that African countries that have been able to attend the Russian diplomatic ties within the African continent in the Russian-Africa summit, it has been a clear definition that they are allying with Russia. Of course, like I was trying to elaborate here, is that they have reasons attached to. Maybe, like Uganda, you had Museveni requesting he would expect the development in terms of infrastructure, in terms of education. Maybe Russian or in terms of technology would have our education improved. You must be aware that just in the 1960s, when most of African countries were getting their independence, you must recall that at least the then president of Libya, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, was one of those who had already proven to be competent in terms of socialism. So by the time Libya experienced the US-Libya war, you must recall that it is because of the envy that the America had already showed against Libya. Of course, when you see countries like Tanzania by then, which were under the leadership of Julius Kambarage Nyerere, had also tried to cope up the same. And another record is that you see some of these superpower states, especially in the UK, United States, they have something that we call to get organized. I mean, to attack somebody or to achieve what you want, we must get organized. That's why you must recall that in our Pan-African quest, in the Pan-African pyramid, we have also said that no, don't antagonize, but organize. That means that by the time we are experiencing the 1884 Berlin Conference, just in the November of 1884, they had realized, no, since the Belgian was already going to Congo because of what was in Congo, because like I said, Africa, stressing Congo as an example, it has got good resources, that one you know. Could it be here in Uganda, we have iron ore, which we are calling Obutare, in Rwanda, Western Uganda. So that means that for this, okay, in short, Russia has been organized to ensure that it calls upon these African countries to attend in their summit. It has not just come out of the blue to say, you come and we dialogue. No, there is the end in mind. Yeah. So that means that looking at the 1884 Berlin Conference, that I wanted to also bring in is that these countries realized we cannot get whatever we want in Africa unless we get organized. That's why they met in Berlin, in Germany, to ensure that they can conquer and capture Africa, especially the rich resources in Africa. When African countries gathered in, I think around February of 1963 there, they had also ensured to meet in Addis, in Ethiopia. And of course, in attendance, there was equally Uganda, there was Libya, there was Tanzania, Tanganyika by then, I think. And their issue was to ensure that they also draft something that was equally going to be rated as the Berlin Conference. Because smart they were, the superpowers, they were like, you know, we can also craft the Africa that we want. So I just wanted to also credit especially those forefathers that even when the post-independent era, the challenges they were trying to look at and sort of were poverty, disease outbreak, things to do with eradicating. So that means today even the rates of literacy have already increased.
Yeah.
So that means that the 1963 Addis meeting, by then, it has also lived its outstanding. However, I think the African member states attending the Russian Africa summit of recent, it has equally showed the other side of African countries, especially those that attended. So just
as we wrap it up with you, is that do you find an issue with the nomenclature of these summits? For example, we have had the USA Africa. You're having one country partnering with an entire continent. Well, I don't know. I think it's about time we begin to dislodge that kind of thinking. Because if it were maybe a global summit, I would understand. But it is one country
And the continent.
and a continent on the other side. I think it's a bit of, I think that undermines
integrity.
Africa's aspirations and undermines what Africa stands for. So I don't know, do you agree with what I think is the case?
I had just had Comrade OO talk about it. And I was also thinking in a similar manner that one super country, of course, these African countries, most of them are weak. And when you look at, yes, they are weak, and you'll agree with me at the end of this discussion. That's why they have to move out from anywhere in African continent to join in one Africa, in other outside state. So I just want to agree with you that they are, of course, there are always interests. And you must also be aware that to be used, you must also use them. That means there is where these African countries expect to benefit from these people that are calling them, but also them calling them, they expect something.
So it's a quid pro.
It's a quid pro.
Understanding.
And maybe when you look at the feasibility study, it's just a trial. Maybe in terms of understanding how, if it could be Russia, how would I benefit? Comrade Trustelin was also elaborate when she said that President Museveni was able to air it out that if worldwide over, it is about 460 billion shillings coming from coffee. They either exporting, tax imposition, all those things there. How much does Uganda get? If we are only producing coffee to only sell out without making our own products, so that we can sell them outside Uganda, how will we able to increase on our tax base? That means Uganda, yes, attending it there, like I'm telling you, it has reasons why it is going there economically. But this has no great impact to the common man in Kisoro.
Okay, and that is what we shall evaluate, the implication of this particular summit onto Uganda. Because you make very good arguments, and I agree with you. Because I think it was Kenneth Waltz, a scholar of political science, who said that the international system is a self-help system. Everyone is there to look out for what they can benefit from. So I agree with you. Whereas we can, disguise under a summit, member states go there with particular interests and motivations in mind.
But also,
I want to bring in Darren. She has been quiet. Darren, I mean, these summits keep on happening. USA Africa Summit. Now we have had Russia Africa Summit. I don't know which other country is going to call Africa
Uganda,
next. Maybe China, Africa. I don't know. But, the way African leaders are so quick to, respond to these calls. I don't know. What do you make of this kind of summits?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dagan. Thank you, comrades, for your brilliant submissions. One, I want to put one thing clear is I didn't really understand the summit. I don't know why I didn't understand why we really have to have a summit at the end of the day. That's why I didn't actually follow it very well, because I didn't make sense of it. Because whatever conversations, whatever discourse was going on in there is the same old.
Yeah.
There's nothing that came out of it. Literally, most of African countries, most of African presidents were complaining. It as if came off as like a battle, like exchanging conversations that are not leading to anything. So one thing that really we get from this is if we really need, to depend on other countries for us to survive. And I would like to disagree with her when she says, and also Hafashimana when they say that Africans are weak countries, and also I think she said that you know, we have like as if we need really to depend on these people.
Need
I don't
hope.
think we do. Yeah, we have hope.
No, it's she said, yeah, that we need hope from those countries.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. She said, yeah, I think that's what she said. Yeah, she said we need hope, but yeah, we need hope. We are very hopeful. We've had this going on for a long time, but I don't think we need, you know, to keep going back to them, like looking like we are really desperate for attention, for what small things they have to give us. Yet what they are taking is really
breadcrumbs.
big.
They take
Yeah,
and
we are getting
breadcrumbs.
breadcrumbs, and then they're like a really
They're taking the entire
the
bread.
entire bread. That's not what we want. And when African leaders really gathered for this summit, it all came out. You know, our president was in that conference, in that summit. I don't know whatever they discussed, but I don't think I don't see why he had to go there, in my opinion. Because one, the things we want we want from Russia, maybe we need assistance. We maybe with our economic development that is already staggering. We need assistance maybe with developing the nuclear power plant that we are trying to work on. But we do not need to convey in summits and conversations that are not leading anywhere at the end of the day. I feel like we didn't need that summit, because already there are a lot of human rights violations that have come from that summit. From the Russia-Ukraine war. There's a lot of really aggressive, you know, action that have taken place, and we gathering doesn't mean that okay, now we have reached like a tipping point, we are breaking through and this is how we are solving everything. No. And yeah, like you said, does it have to be one country like Russia, like US hosting all these other African countries? Like, why do we have to be the ones that keep going back to them? I don't think that makes sense for me.
All right. Well, we shall evaluate the sense much more deeper. If the likes of Samora Machel of Mozambique, the likes of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, the likes of Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, the likes of Abdel Nasser, if these guys were here today, do you think they would comfortably pack their bags and go to St. Petersburg to attend a 2 days conference where you have 30 minutes to interact with the person who has convened you? I don't know, where is Africa heading towards? Are we gradually giving away our sovereignty and our independence?
Yeah, I get your pain. I see the way you are having pangs of anger deep in the bottom of your heart. But reflecting, you see, immediately Ghana got independence in 1957. My very, very loved and dear grandfather of Sajefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, convened the All Africa's Conference a year after getting independence in 1958. That's the time when Guinea-Conakry also gets independence. And the key reason why this conference, the All Africa's Conference, was convened was basically to alert the people from across the African continent that the struggle we are having today, we have started, achieving the fruits of the struggle, getting independence, because by that time at least 2 countries had already gotten independent. He informed them that a time is going to come when these people we are pushing out of the African continent will come back using the back door. And that is the aspect of neocolonialism. Still, in 1963, at the formation of OAU in Addis Ababa, Osajefo, Kwame Nkrumah stood on the podium and alerted African, leaders and nationalists from all over the continent that our struggles, if we do not nurture a generation that will defend the struggle, the sweat that we have poured on this land, we shall go back to a modern day kind of colonization. And it's only unfortunate that Russia now is pursuing this kind of agenda, of woodwinking and manipulating African leaders to sit them down in a room, drawing the whole continent. Because from the beginning, I told you, Russia was a very good friend to African countries. And I can tell you, during that time, I don't think Russia was maybe we benefited because of the war that was taking place between the East and the West. You see, sometimes you can benefit out of people's wars.
Yeah.
If someone is fighting you, you can come and support me so that you are weakened if you are sharing the same platform.
True.
So I think Osajefo, perhaps when he sees this happening in Russia, he turns with a lot of tears in the grave, because he wouldn't want to see an Africa that is, pursuing such a direction. It angers you so much when today President Museveni sends a delegation to the United States of America. They go and talk about opportunities, then people come back and sleep. Then the next year, you see another delegation going to St. Petersburg. They go and discuss the things, and they come back to sleep. I respect so much the submissions of my brother Afashiman. I'm a Pan-Africanist myself. I believe in radical Pan-Africanism. My dear sister here said she did not see a reason for this conference. My assessment is that last year we had the same conference, and there's no tangible result we have seen coming out of the conference. The vice president went to US, nothing has happened. Whereas we believe in Pan-Africanism, we must be in position to know that we have to exchange services and knowledge in the international system.
Globalization.
Basing on, a level platform of engagement. You cannot call the continent to go and discuss with you when you are alone as a country. If I want to engage Comrade Kidega, I will invite you and we have a one-on-one. President Museveni is at the capacity. Uganda is a very, is a very powerful country with the president, with the people and elected leaders. So if you want to engage Uganda, you invite Uganda, and then you have a meaningful conversation that can benefit the two countries. Because I want to agree to the fact that we must cooperate.
Yeah.
You get the point? Because there are things Uganda cannot do as Uganda.
True.
Uganda cannot construct roads. That's why we have Chinese companies in Uganda. Maybe the question now comes to,
but how about building capacity of the Ugandans to that,
like it has been happening. I did tell you that Russia has been in position to extend scholarships to Ugandan students to go and get training, expertise training that perhaps some of our institutions cannot be in position to offer. You see, Comrade Kidega, today if you went to Namang and you offered land to my brother Fashiman, you give him 40 acres of land and you tell him, you develop this land.
You'd fail to use it.
You are going to see the land idle. You get the point? There are very few Ugandans that will be in position to do certain levels of investment. Are you getting the point? Because I believe most Ugandans do not have capital. But my problem is when we go to bargain with Russia, then we are making shallow bargaining, where you will find you see, I think you've moved on the streets of Kampala, you can find a Chinese man owning a shop of 5 million shillings. That is what we should never allow, and that is what we call poor bargaining power. If a Chinese is coming to invest in Uganda, it should come and put a multi-billion project. That cannot be done by Ugandans. If Ugandans have failed to set a bus construction company, that's what we should be engaging Russia on.
Yeah.
Not to give us grains.
Not them competing in Chikubo with our...
Exactly. What will one Kidega do? If you are selling ropes. I've seen a shop of a Chinese man in the city selling ropes, selling Saiso products. So for me, I feel like the elders, Julius Kambaraga Nyerere,
Gamal
Abdel Gamel Nasser, Ahmed Ben Bella, this very powerful men, Amilcar Cabral,
Namudi Azikiwe.
Yes, Hastings Kamuzu Banda. These are guys who wished well for the African continent, and these guys are weeping in the grave because we are stooping too low to make shallow discussions. We cannot attract a foreign country to come and do things that we can do ourselves. If we're engaging Russia on the issue of Uganda's coffee, what is Russia bringing on the table? Is Russia, allying with us to help us establish a processing plant to put value addition on our coffee? Are you getting the point?
Yeah.
Our fish in Lake Victoria, how is Russia going to help us? We don't want to take our fish to We don't want Russian companies to come and ferry our fish in the fridge. We want to pack. We want to do value addition and export ready what? Ready products that can earn Ugandans money. Because we're a rich country. But we have failed to bargain. We have failed to make proper engagements. Because you have just talked about, you see, in the international system where countries interact, there is a space where countries interact. And countries are like human beings. They are always driven by self-interest. The way, you see, you cannot wake up, Comrade Kidega, in the morning and just go there at Ntinda there and you just be sitting there without an interest. There is something propelling you to do whatever you're doing. So when Russia calls all African countries to St. Petersburg, there is something, like Comrade Afashimana said, down, which is not seen by the greater majority. Of course, Russia is branded as a country that is not interested in imperialism, but there is something that someone will not be in position to see. So for me, I believe that next time when such engagements are taking place, perhaps our leaders out there should really think about a Ugandan outside there. It's very nasty when Abu Bakr construction company is kicked out of business because of just building a stretch of 5 kilometers, and you're bringing a Russian company to do such small, These people should come in the event that we have now failed to do something.
Fantastic, fair enough. Lynn,
Yes.
from the international, and because I asked because you are a lawyer in the making, all right? From the international law perspective of this conversation is that Russia has violated the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yes.
It has committed acts of aggression against another sovereign state. And, the death toll and the injuries caused to people in Kyiv has been enormous. Now, countries that have openly showed their alliance with Russia, do they stand to have their human rights record jeopardized? Because if you're in bed with a country that has openly violated human rights, what does that speak about your own human rights as a country? And you're speaking of Burkina Faso, Uganda, South Africa, all these countries that were there. Their human rights, because if there is a dirty cloth there and you get close to it, you're bound to get dirty a bit. So speak to the issue of human rights just for a second, then I'll pose to you some other question.
Okay, so the idea and the aspect of human rights is really very key. I believe we are here also because probably in our discussion here, there is some bit of human rights, the freedom for you to express yourself, quite so many of them. But when it comes to their aggressive violations, really, issues to do with death and killings of people, innocent people, and then there could be issues to do with people dying because of poverty. They are not having what to eat. Now, to me, I think, yes, there could be a slight alignment with countries that are aligning themselves with Russia in terms of violations of the rights. And to me, when you look at it in the aspect that these countries also are going there in regards to say that we are also going to get some money, maybe improve the education sector, maybe it is also part of human rights. People are going to have a right to education. But then we should look at how sensitive and how navigating it gets to the system, that how many hundreds of people are dying. And then also we need to put in mind that part of the resolutions or part of the reasons as why people went to this summit was to see how best they can liaise and have these wars come to an end, because it is really a disgrace in society, and human rights violations really call for a quick and just approaches. But then also here we question the role of the judiciary and also the role of the UN, because first of all, we have ICJ, we have really commendable measures on how these resolutions should come up, that if a country like this has violated this right, What are the penalties that should be accorded to them? But then also the Security Council, sometimes you find they also have an influence within the ICJ. And the Security Council, remember, you have to have a say from other countries. What are their views? What are they saying? You cannot bring your reason alone and it will be recommended. You have to have a backup of the other countries that are part of it. And so you find Russia itself is also part of the people that you're supposed to inquire from. And then also because they have an influence in some of the other countries, so you find it becomes a bit problematic in terms of structure and governance administration, but then connecting it with human rights. And then of recent, even within Uganda, you trust me, we've had questions on independence of judiciary, who runs judicially, are they really independent? What powers have we seen connive with this and that? And so is the same outside. So is the same in Russia. So is the same within the UN. So is the same within the Security Council. So to me, partly, I would say that, yes, I feel the UN should have done more of penalties, giving penalties to where they are due. But then we don't rule out the idea of lack of independence of the judiciary system. And so this makes it as if people are not bothered about what's really happening. Or sometimes people tend to ignore certain things, just like even in Uganda, someone does something and you're like, really? Should it have been done that way? But then because of people having power over others, as it may look on the face of it, then interventions become limited. Maybe you do not have, say, the money to, go over the cases, or sometimes you do not have actually the right information. Maybe sometimes a lot of really questions that come in. But yes, well, Russia should have been dealt with. But then there are a lot of circumstances that contribute to people saying things that let things be, maybe they're comfortable like that. But it is our role really to take up such and see what is good and what is bad, and then also how best we can recommend each other.
Then lastly, before I move to Afasha, is that just two peculiar statements from me is that, one, Russia is able to host the interim president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore. On the other side, the West is saying that they will not recognize his leadership. So what do these two fronts speak to the aspect of democracy? Is Russia concerned with issues of democracy, or for them it is about, what they can benefit? Because, I mean, if they cared about nurturing an African democracy, then perhaps they would have reservations towards what has happened in Burkina Faso, where you have a military coup ousting another legitimately elected leader. So what does that speak about the aspect of Russia and its interest in democracy?
Well, I think democracy, first of all, has been defined.
Or do you think that they've left us to define our own democracy? I mean, Africans do it as you wish. We don't care. But just if it's about coup, it's a business. As long as a leader emerges through whatever process, it's your business.
Well, quite an interesting one. There are so many arguments on what democracy really is, and different authors, different theories, different specialists have really defined democracy in their own way. One would say that democracy is the will of the people, that what you do should entirely reflect what people want or desire to see in society. But then there is also a recent definition that I got on democracy, that a country to be considered democracy, that it is seen on how they are able to treat the minorities. Most of us tend to say that democracy, we are going with the majority. But here comes with someone who says that, no, if you're saying the majority and leaving out the minority, I feel it makes much more sense when you actually incorporate the minority that you're trying to pull out. And so getting back to democracy in the idea of Burkina Faso and then Russia, I feel yes, different countries, first of all, you look at a country like Uganda, you're talking about democracy. You find maybe my brother here, who will tell you, no, that is not democracy. That even within the countries themselves, democracy seems not to have a standard gauge that this is democracy. You have a citizen telling you, no, this is democracy, and you have another one saying, no, 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 I've not seen democracy at all.
Yeah.
And then we have the unified. You have democracy and you have authority. You have authoritative rule. You have a mixture of a whole composition of leadership and structures within. So sometimes the democracy itself is not clearly identified within our countries.
Yeah.
So how best do we expect maybe Russia to say that, no, you see, this is democracy. This should be democracy of Burkina Faso. This should be the democracy of Russia. So it goes back to the ideal of a country and the settings. Then also the idea of how their governance structure runs.
Yeah, I agree.
Their political question runs, because democracy mainly tries to entail issues of elections. Maybe was this fair? Was this not? Can I be able to speak out what I want at any time I feel like? And then can I be able to approach this one on these challenges and they're able to be resolved? And then the idea of militarization, how is military involved in the aspect of security, but then also rule of law, and then taking it back to human rights. So quite a lot that each and every country, but then there's that neutrality that it should be by the will of the people, honestly. It should be by the will of the people, and it should entail at creating harmony. Whether you're saying that you should consider you feel that the minority should actually be put at the top front, because the minority actually most of the times face these injustices in the fact that you think we are the majority, so we can push along and leave behind those ones. But most of the times the minority are the disadvantaged. The poor are not able to come out and speak for themselves. So democracy, before we define it in our own countries and context and understand it, then it doesn't really require Russia to say that, you see, no, this one is this one is democracy, this is the actual leader, this is not. So many questions in there.
All right. Thank you very much, Lynn. Well, we are due for a short commercial break, and let's do just that and see you after.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. Well, let's just, cut to the chase. Hafasha, the theme of this engagement was peace, security, and development. Uganda finds itself in an era where we are dealing with transnational terrorism. You know that not so long ago, we lost so many lives in a school in Kasese, owing to the aspect of terrorism of the ADF. On several occasions, we have had, Ugandans, you recall the twin bomb blasts in 2010, so Uganda is grappling with terrorism, So when such conferences convene under the theme dubbed security and peace, do you think that, there should be perhaps greater take-homes for us that, well, we are here in St. Petersburg, but how can Russia help us deal with the aspect of ADF that has been, taking away innocent lives in Uganda? How can we deal with the aspect of Boko Haram, that is formed in Nigeria, but the acts of violence cut across? How can we deal with Al-Qaeda of Afghanistan? So all these transnational terror groups, shouldn't such conferences be able to address some of these pertinent security issues that we are grappling with as a country?
Power. I just wanted to be Your question can be answered in my perspective.
Hope by poor you didn't mean Patrick. Only at a boy.
No. I just meant cool. It's all right. It's all right. No, that's like Swahili phrase.
FDC is in the middle of
Yeah,
Okay.
so you might recall that today I serve with the Stowaway. And we believe that the ability of an eagle to fly in the sky more than other birds in the air, it is because it has the ability to harness the wind beneath its wings. Issues to do with security are so pertinent in Africa that we desire. Firstly, you might recall that every country to develop, then security, or there should be peace prevailing in that country. That's why in the past recent, especially from the 1997, 2000, when Laurent Kabila was taking over DRC, we have not seen peace, and therefore we have not seen the super and robust development in the DRC Congo in the past recent days. That means if you have had these engagements, we should be able to expect some of these topics coming up. Is even Russia concerned that Uganda lost those lives of young people in Kasese? Is it even bothered? Even other countries anywhere in Africa bothered that we lost that kind of operation? I just wanted to recall that just in South Africa in around 1948, 46 there during the apartheid times, the Dutch people hadn't yet given the independence to the South Africans by then. Of course, that's when we would see those of Nelson Mandela coming up, styling up, rising up to ensure that they fight for the black man in South Africa. And you might recall that the then British Prime Minister, in the names of Harold Macmillan, was traversing all over the African continent to ensure that if these African countries that were the colonies of these superpower countries had already been yet given their independence. Just to note that is that he had just left, Macmillan had just left Nigeria when he was going to South Africa. So when he reached in South Africa, Macmillan realized that the Dutch hadn't yet given freedom to the South Africans, even when likes of Abdul Gamal Nasser were already doing something in Egypt, even when those of Nelson Mandela were doing their part to ensure that these African countries would get liberated. But he was making a speech, and when he was given a chance, he said that I have traversed the whole African nation, African continent, and I've just realized that it is only you, the majority, that have not yet given independence to the blacks in South Africa. So there is a situation that every African countries are going through, and it is sweeping across. Therefore, it is time for you to give independence to the South Africans. When he was doing that, it was a clear example that he was having goodwill for South Africans to get liberated. So if Russia and other superpower countries, including the UK, including China, cannot get bothered at the time when Uganda lost these people in Kasese, then I think it's another question to address. And I do not really think that Comrade Namatov was saying it. I don't think that this issue was actually highlighted in the summit we had. If it means even compensating the families, is it just about Ugandan government? I thought when a relationship comes in, it must be two-way. It is like a boyfriend and a girlfriend. When we are in a relationship, I must benefit. We must also what? Benefit. It is a symbiosis relationship. So if that is not happening, then I feel like this summit of Russia-Africa has not addressed that question. Before we, just I think minutes ago, Comrade O was also clear when he said that wherever these forefathers of Africa are, they must be believing of the Africa we are doing today. And because of the continuous neocolonialism, the bits of imperialism, it means that we are not really achieving the dreams of these forefathers. You must recall that before Gaddafi died in 2011, around October there, he had already ensured that Libya was going through a steady socio-economic transformation. Of course, you might recall that today's leading NRM party in Uganda here, it is part of their pillars, the socio-economic transformation. And I just wanted to recall that by then, if Comrade Chidega or Trusterin was already done with university, he would immediately get a free housing accommodation. That was Libya by then, by the way, which is not even there today. And I think that's why the superpowers got annoyed and they started fighting against the super socialist state in Libya. And for example, if I was unemployed, I would still be paid because I'm unemployed. And such things would bridge the gap. You might recall that today is from the UBOS statistics. It is projected that in the year of 2050, Africa will be contributing 40% of the world's population. And you might recall that Uganda today is one of the leading fastest growing population here. That means our surge, our energy must be focused on empowering the younger generation. You might recall that when you had just scooped a position as Secretary for Labor in the National Youth Council of Uganda, you were able to go to Russia. And therefore, the charisma and the experience that you were able to gain when you were there, you now have something, a story to tell. And that's why you would want to call upon a spirit of Pan-Africanism for those who would want to travel and go outside the African continent, go and don't stay there. This is an Africa that you can do with ourselves. Go run a few things, come back, let's implement them. We develop an African continent.
Yeah.
Of course, to note that when those colleagues, the forefathers, those of Kwame Nkrumah had met, he was just reminding Africans that just you are not an African because you were born in Africa, but you are an African because Africa is born in you. So that notion doesn't mean the wording and sentiment only. It must be upon implementation. So losing one life in Uganda here in Kasese, it is a blow. What if that person who died, that kid in senior what was going to become the next president of Uganda? What if he was the next Chidega to go to Russia to get some knowledge from there? I'm really trying to be objective because these are things that really perturb us. Imagine I was not born, I wouldn't be here today speaking these national things.
True.
I want that when next day I am here, when OO is here, is speaking those major issues that are affecting us and the possible solutions to these problems. I have had issues with Makerelians every time they are speaking. They did not avoid the word problematic. And I have had issues with the trusting that why don't we avoid that word problem? Because everything you think there is a problem, then the problem must come. So the issue is looking for the wrong term solutions for these problems. So I just wanted to say that if wherever today these forefathers are, including Mama Gaddafi, Gamal Abdul Nasser, I think we've also had one from Chisoro Kare, Kaiches. So wherever these people are, yes. Wherever these people are, they are flying. Kariches. That is the father of General KK. By then, before even he died, I think he was on a plane going to ensure that Africa would get independence, especially for Uganda. So wherever they are, if today they were here, I think Uganda itself, the people who are employed today, they would be rubbing shoulders with the big people in the country. But because there is a big problem of unemployment, Gaddafi by then had also employed the unemployment scheme. Tuko pamoja. So I just wanted to conclude that by saying that much more is to be done. And I just wanted to also feel like Africa is a sophisticated country. We are powerful, by the way. Leaving around the other external influence of imperialism, of course, being, I have had issues with the also religion somehow, by the way. Because some of these ideologies, they are penetrated through religion. That's why you must recall every bishop who must go through in every, that they must go to, I don't know if he's a bishop or an archbishop at the national level, they must go to Canterbury for mentorship. Mentorship on what should happen in the country where they are coming from. So you might recall that I think in not many years ago, like about 5 years ago, a black baby and a white baby were put together. And of course, they were able to talk, and they were given two doors: a door that is white and a door that is black. And a black baby was asked if to choose the most beautiful doll. The black baby chose the white doll that is beautiful and ignored the black doll. That would mean that we are being taught how to hate ourselves. And Nelson Mandela, before actually he even died, he was able to say that if humanity can be taught how to love, to hate, why can't they be taught how to love? Because love comes by natural instincts. That means that if a baby that is black and easily have the confidence to say a white doll is so beautiful than a black doll, it's because they have seen how people are treating themselves. Today, you might recall even if you met a Muzungu there, you do see them for about 5 seconds. But if you met a black man, you would not mind actually much more how you would look at them. You might recall that even when you see everything that is to do with the black, it is considered bad and ugly. Yes, they might say you are black a beauty, but the fact is you are black. And I think the issue should come within inside, not just outside from within. That means that if I can see at Chidega is a very energetic black man, leaving only the other perception of being bad and ugly. Why? Because you see even burial ceremonies, by the way. More at the time that you will see a casket covered with a black what? Kiros. Am I right?
Yeah.
Because black is, that's what they have been able to plant in us. But we can chase away all those things there. And we say, no, everything that is black is actually beautiful. Africa that is indescribable, Africa that is sophisticated, and Africa that I and you can admire for generations to come.
True. Yeah, I think that is the kind of radical panacrism that we need, moving forward. But Darren, you know, part of the aspects of this summit was around development. Let's talk about our healthcare sector for a second, right? Because I want to believe that development is broad-based. It is health, it is education, it is infrastructure, and other things. You know, as a country, we have just sanctioned the deployment of medical interns after, you know, a cat and mouse chase between the police and those who have been asking to be deployed. Now, when we have our president going to Russia and their commitments to development, do you think that this development can translate into our medical sector, whereby we are able to, first of all, build or construct more hospitals, whereby we are able to have money sufficient to deploy our medical interns, who therefore support the medical sector? So I don't know, do such meetings translate into what he said? Do they impact that ordinary Ugandan in Kisoro? Do you think that the health in Kisoro will become better? Do you think that we will have more drugs in hospitals because, you know, there was a summit that was dubbed under development? So do these translate into some pertinent issues like healthcare sector?
Thank you, Chidega. To answer your plainly, no. I don't think like we need a summit to say, okay, now we have had the Russia-Africa summit and we have had our president go there. Now we are sure we can have medical interns, you know, back in, you know, in hospitals working, or we can maybe now work on better hospitals. We can, like, we are at a good place right now. I don't think it's even funny. It's even funny to just put it in that perspective, like, do we really need, because if the summit was all about, you know, economic development and peace and what, yes, it was, and maybe that's what the best theme they thought it was best for them to structure it that way, and maybe because we also, I want to quote unquote and say we are very desperate, African nations. I think wherever we see a statement that maybe aligns to what we want to achieve, or maybe that we think we can get from these people, we jump on board quickly. And maybe that was the best theme for Russia and whoever organized this summit to put it and say, okay, now this is maybe the best way, because they know we are lacking development. Like most of the African countries are struggling, and we are not struggling because we know we are not supported by the Western, maybe by the Russian countries, and maybe Ukraine. We are not lacking because we are not supported, but they know deep down we have an urge for development. We have an urge to cut ties with them, and whatever way we are going to achieve it, we are going to jump on board for for it. So to just really put it, I don't think this summit, it was a 2-day summit. What dialogue can you have in 2 days? What can you, like, how can we say that, okay, the president went to Russia for a summit in 2 days, and now when he came back, these are the developments. Do we even know, like, what really specific things they talked about? I know they talked about, you know, the moving of the nuclear power plant. They talked about the economic development, a lot of conversations. But how is it helping us? I don't think that speaks to our health, you know, our health issues that we have as a country. We need to handle them as a country, as, you know, as a local nation, not us seeking, you know, support through a 2-day summit. I don't think I even agree with any events organizer that comes up with a 2 days conversation. Because if you're having it for 2 days, at least have meaningful discourses and have recommendations that people are going to go back home at and look at it and say, okay, I was there and this is what came out. If today the young people, or maybe anyone, asked, you know, to meet with a parliament and maybe the president, and asked them, okay, you went for the summit, and how is it solving our issues? Like, what solutions do you have? And these are my own words, like, what solutions do you have for us? Because at the end of the day, what you want are solutions. We appreciate the president going there because we know at the end of the day, we need these people. You know, we need them somehow. But at least we need we also don't need to stoop too low, like Oo said. We do not need to stoop too low to have to be in conflicts that are not going to benefit us. So about our healthy issues, it's for us. It's for us, and it has nothing to do with this summit. And I don't think, I don't think that there's anything that came out. And if you're going to handle the deployment of interns and getting them back, I think that should be about us. And if Russia or maybe any other countries that would maybe want to come through and support us, it shouldn't be through a 2 days summit that we don't even get to hear how that went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. The issue of education was mentioned partly, and Russia committed to upscaling its opportunities for scholarships. To me, that says two things. Because I don't know how many Russians come to Makerere University to attain either higher level education or to do their masters, or I don't know how many go to University of Nairobi. I don't know. But here we are excited that we have our young people who will now have the chance to study in Russia. So what does that speak about our education system generally? That's one. Two is that the aspect of, okay, not brain drain exactly, because Havasha said that when you go and work in Russia, please come back home. He's pleading, so sorry, when you go and study there, please come back home. So he's pleading with those who have managed to go and study there to come back home. But are there opportunities back home anyway? All right? So aren't we doing the inevitable that I will go to Russia, attain an education under maybe whatever scholarship, and because there are opportunities there, I will find myself almost being lured to stay in Russia. Therefore, brain drain and you know and other issues come in. But also the aspect of the president mentioned about inviting Russian companies to have interest in the development of our oil. All right. So it looks like we have cast so much hope in this oil that is going to come from the Albert region. I don't know. Should we not realize what we hope? I think it could be a big blow for us. So just those two issues, education and also the oil sector development.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Kidega. I did follow, and I saw how the president was trying his best in interesting the president of Russia into the affairs of Uganda, particularly education, but also the oil. Like we did say at the beginning of this conversation, we said that Russia has already been supporting Uganda's growth in the line of education from the time of the struggles, and not only Uganda, many African countries have been sending people. Now you bring a very interesting point of brain drain. I have a one OPO who has got a scholarship to go and study in Russia, and he gets the very good training that is talked about. Like you've said, it's going to be very hard for such a person to think about even coming back to Uganda. It is something that we have talked about for so long, that after getting training, you should be in position to come back and do nation building, because you have gotten the expertise, you have gotten the skills that you really need to bring back home, because those people already have it. But the question is, if I come back to Uganda, will I be in position to to utilize the training I have got? You've seen Ugandans even going for just simple competitions, maybe sports competition, and they are escaping away from the team to go and look for opportunities. What about someone who has gotten training that is even needed by the Russian government itself? Because they also make attempts to retain these people they have trained.
True.
The government itself
most of those high performers.
Exactly. They make attempts to retain these very good, very promising, trainees. So for me, I think one of the things that we should be looking at, we should also start deconstructing the aspect of sending Ugandans to study in Russia, but also maybe think about sending experts from the Russian education sector to come and perhaps station in Makerere University, station in Chambogo University, and train our students from here. You get the point? So that after training them, government will also get the pinch, because for you to have to import, you know, unexpert educationists from Russia to Uganda, you will have spent some money, and you will have to put value for that money you are spending, and then perhaps at the end you're going to be in position to assign a space scientist you've trained like Kidega and say, we need you to start working with government to construct this industry.
Yeah.
You get the point. So I think our education just needs boosting, then we can train our own, because we are doing well in some sectors. If you look at our doctors, we are training the best doctors in the continent. Our doctors are actually moving away. People are struggling for them. A lot of Ugandan doctors are in South Africa. That is, of course, Africa. My brother Afashimana would say that is one nation and there's no problem. And I agree as well, because if a Ugandan doctor is working in Botswana, working in Egypt, working in Nigeria, we are one. We are one people, and we can always share. There is a gentleman in Burkina Faso called Kere. Kere is a very good architect. He has designed, I think, you know, very, very popular and very powerful artworks and buildings across the world in Europe. And most of his contracts have been in Europe. He's a man who was trained by the French. But he has come back to start using the architecture he studied to come up with modern buildings that can fit in his society in Burkina Faso. Being a dry place, he's trying to craft buildings that can relate with the society of Burkina Faso. And that is the kind of education we are talking about. That if Kidega is trained in Russia, how can he use the education he has got to better the lives of Uganda? Because he understands the society we are living in, and perhaps he can be the best to interpret what kind of roads we need, what kind of buildings we need, you know. If we are building maybe hospital facilities, how do we need to build in Karamoja? And how can that, you know, improve the whole sector? So for me, I think that's the direction we should go. We should encourage people who go out to come back home, but also think about building our systems to train our own human resource from home, so that they might not even think about going outside. Then on the question of, you did talk about
exploring the oil sector.
Yeah, because I heard the president so much emphasizing the aspect of, you know, constructing the refinery, having the Russian government to come and support. It's a good initiative, because we need the oil, we need it refined, and perhaps if we refine it here in East Africa, it would have more value than exporting crude oil to other countries to go and refine for us. Because Ugandans have put a lot of their eyes on the oil, and it needs to be pushed for the greater good. This gentleman said that we should come here to talk about the issues that affect the people of Uganda. So when we have the oil project, for example, if a refinery is put in place, we know very many young people are going to be absorbed to give human resource. A lot of projects, a lot of business is also going to boom in the areas that this, you know, that is going to refine the oil, but also the extraction. You know that OIMA is already, you know, starting to do well. A lot of interest, a lot of people are starting to invest in OIMA because of the oil in the Albertine region.
Wow, fantastic. Colleagues, I want to invite you later on to just give your comments regarding the state of our multi-party politics, with what is happening in the Forum for Democratic Change, with what is happening in the Democratic Party. You know, just a comment from you guys later on. But again, also, we have to wrap this up. Lynn, just my final question to you, then we can look at the multi-party aspect, is that our debt burden continues to haunt this country. I think we are about to reach the debt ceiling. If we don't get a debt waiver by good luck, then we are headed for tough times as a country. All right. So the issue of our economic situation is of fundamental concern to us. So such a summit, do you think, in your honest opinion, do you think it opens channels for economic transformation in this country? Do you think the farmer down there, my mother is a farmer, she grows maize, And when I was able to visit her last week, she told me that, the price of maize grain has really dropped down. And farmers like her are failing to break even because they cannot realize even the bare minimum profit. So in terms of economic transformation, do you think such summits that we committing the entire head of state and all those officials, do you think they have a chance at transforming our economy?
Well, I want to begin with that in around 1970s, we have had so many mechanisms coming, all in the name of economic transformation. So in the 1970s, we have the structured adjustment programs coming. And we have how best do we increase finances, we have the IMF coming in to give some assistance where it can be. And so in the 2000s, the Millennium Development Goals coming.
Yeah.
What are they tackling? Economy transformation, poverty eradication, reduced inequalities. Somehow I think those did not work as expected. And so in 2015, we have the Sustainable Development Goals coming. That is the 2030 agenda. And so these come in when you look at Sustainable Development Goal number 8 on decent work and economic growth. I feel this is where we pitch in and this is where we come in. But then also, you have an idea that we are also looking at innovation, industrialization, and as part of economic growth. But then also you have a goal on sustainable communities and cities. Because if your communities and cities are not able to sustain themselves, then economic development is a myth. And then also, you're thinking of how best do we align this in regards to SDG number 3 on good health and well-being? Because if people are not able to, live up to their live up in a healthy environment, access, hospitals where they can, then development and economic growth is still a mess. And so we have had several. Uganda Vision 2040 also entails in how best do we develop ourselves economically. The NDPs, how best do we develop ourselves economically? Even Africa has come up with the African agenda, the 2063 agenda. And all this is really pertinent on how best...
Even here we have Agenda 2040.
Yeah, 2040, Vision 2040.
Yeah, sorry.
They're saying on how best do we really... It shows that there is really so much that we need to do in regards of economic development. Now, when we go back to the summit, I believe partly one of the things that was agreed in the summit, or that was requested, was that Putin accepted to waive away some of the debts of some countries, which were close to 2 billion something. And so waiving away a debt is kind of a relief. A relief.
And I think Russia gave us a debt during COVID-19.
Yes, it did. So waiving away those debts is partly also part of solutions, because if you're not having that burden anymore, and then meaning that the rest of the money you have maybe could be used for infrastructure, could be used for, innovation and technology, could be used for industrialization. Given
that more than 40% of our national budget goes towards debt refinancing.
Exactly. And so here comes in that if those part of the countries that were able to attend, and then you're able to get a relief, partly we cannot say that the summit is really in vain. Maybe we can question the idea that why must it be, in Petersburg, that why must you travel to Russia? But then we also have to put into consideration that actually Putin financed and built each and everything in this conference. So there are no expenses. And so when you reach and he's able to say, you see, we are waiving away this. Yes, he could have interests. We cannot take away the fact that everyone has interests. But if he's saying we are waiving away this debt, then I feel it is really a good move. Because it will help you, first of all, develop. It will help you that money can be used for something else. So we cannot purely say that, such and such conferences are not needed. Maybe we can question on where they are held, how many times are they held, and what visible outcome have we had on ground? What is the implication of you sitting in Russia? And then I think that there is also something that we need to question. The idea of feedback and information. We realize that without information, we cannot do so much. And so if our representatives attend those meetings, but you're not able to get clear information on actually what is discussed and what is the recommendable way forward, or what has actually been agreed, because very many times we've had ourselves sign so many treaties, and then after pull out of the same treaties, story day in, day out. But if we are able to have information from our representatives that actually attend such informations, clear information, most of us gamble with a lot of hearsay, and we don't know exactly what was in that conference, what was the recommendable way forward, what was agreed upon that could actually be helped in Uganda. And then also when they come back, let them tell us that, you see, this is what we agreed upon, and maybe if there was any sort of financial assistance, this is what was able to be given to us, and we shall use it with in that and that and that. Accountability comes in, because people would actually keep thinking you're going for trips today, tomorrow you're going for trips, and they feel there is nothing being brought in back. So it will have a lot of constraints in actually believing that these conferences work. And then also on the aspect of dialogue and negotiation, I feel contributes so much to our well-being. Contributes and actually it avoids the idea of continued conflicts. Because dialogue, if you're able to sit and say, no, I think this should not be done this way, but this way, then it tries to reduce the pressure and tension that would actually maybe sometimes result into use of force by certain powerful, or certain even within Uganda and Africa.
Wow, fantastic. Hafasha, let's shift gears a bit. And and mind you, our viewers, access to information is a right.
Yes.
And there is a law that actually gives citizens the right to access information. Of course, with certain limitations, but largely you have a right to information as a citizen. But Hafasha, we have 10 minutes to go. I thought I could pick your minds on the state of multi-party dispensation in our country, with what is happening in the Forum for Democratic Change, the Democratic Party, UPC, factions after factions. Are we headed for the movement system?
Good. As I attack that question, I just want to remind our viewers that just in the past, if not even today, I think in our primary schools, even secondary schools, before the introduction of East African Community Anthem, there used to be a hope song. We are the pillars of tomorrow's Uganda. Let us unite and seek true knowledge, yielding discipline, resourcefulness to rebuild the great pearl, which is Uganda and Africa in general. And when you see whatever is happening in Uganda, especially in the environment of political party politics, the multi-party dispensation, you realize that it's of course setting a precedence that has an impact on the generation today. The other day, like majority of the Ugandans were able to see on the front line, NBS, there was a blame. And therefore, it was to look at whatever is happening in the Forum for Democratic Change, but also the DP, what lessons can we exactly actually draw from whatever is happening with the circus, with arrests, brutal arrests, beating people up and here and there, and who are even, who actually is it affecting? So at the end of the day, it is happening at the national level, but of course it is being split down up to the local man. Just on record, I think yesterday, if not countrywide, there were the elections for the Youth League, for the FDC party. And perhaps when OO comes in, I remember him as a person who has really somehow rated in that area. And therefore he will have his say about what is happening in where he was, or if he is there. And of course, looking at the Uganda that we need, we would want to really advocate for a better leadership with people who are integral, people with robust decision making that should not even impose a lot of bad feelings to the general public. And when you look at what is happening in the DP, personally, I see it as a skit in a manner that you recall that when you're in your secondary schools or even primary, the same issue used to happen, maybe to appease somebody. It reminds me of the appeasement policy of Germany and I think France against Japan and all those things. And maybe whatever is happening in DP, especially against or with the ruling party NRM, it is more of appeasing, and maybe like might recall also these political parties come with a lot of interests. Somebody will say, we'll give examples of the people who have made it now, looking at our right honorable deputy speaker of parliament, Honorable Tayewa. We know historically has been part of the FDC, and perhaps the transition or whatever he was doing in the FDC must have been looked at as a tracing transition to the ruling power, might be part of the NRM. So whatever is happening is to, I think in the recent past, I think among the young people, they call it okwetega. Okwetega in terms of opportunities, okwetega in terms of survival, but also okwetega in terms of earning. So whatever is happening, I really, as a human being, but also in my own view, if quoted, that it depends on the interests. Who wants what? When do they want it? Just like you saw a jokery. When was that? Who is that? When was that? Who is that? So I think whatever is happening in Uganda today, to me, doesn't really show the clear example of the hope song that we used to sing in primary.
Yeah.
And perhaps the composers, those of Grace Vingira, if they arrive today, they'd of course be really shedding tears because of how Ugandan affairs are handled.
Yeah.
I think political parties would be looked at just as a form of mobilization, not just what is happening today. And if it is to gain the interest in Uganda today, there should be good lessons to be learned from each of the scenarios that is happening today. You saw the homecoming of Omera, Honorable Nobert Mao in Kaunda grounds. I don't know what I saw if it was true because I wasn't there physically, but what I saw in media was more of really, it was more of handing over powers. I'm now done. Others can take the party over and over again, but for me, I'm here. Perhaps because I was telling about interest, there is that beginning with the end in mind. When you read the book of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, he will clearly tell you that whatever is happening, everybody has the beginning, and therefore they are doing something because they expect something at the end of the day. Okay? Every time you assume an office, there is what you want. So whatever is happening, whether you see Honorable Nanda Mafavi, when you see Semu Uganda, actually, amidst them, they would even be colleagues, even when I saw the delegates from Eastern Uganda condemning the act. So whatever is happening is equally...
It's about interest.
Yeah, it's about interests.
Darren, I know you're not very politically interested, but just your comments regarding these, because these parties are public institutions and your taxes go into financing their activities. So you cannot not have interest in how they're being run. Right. So just I mean looking at all these, what do you just make of it?
Yeah. I think whatever is happening is really showing us where we are headed to. We may not maybe have a bigger picture right now of what maybe Ugandan politics has to look like, but all the drama that is happening among parties is a clear indication maybe we are moving away from where we started. In my opinion, because if our whole idea is democracy, is good governance, is having better leaders in offices, and then we are fighting like cats and dogs, I don't think that makes sense to me. And like Hafashi said, it affects the local person, that the person that doesn't even know that after you come on screen and maybe have these arguments and what, you go back and have a table together and eat. So at the end of the day, as watching the other time, I know most Ugandans are really interested in the front line, and maybe they expected something was going to come out of it. And me personally, I watched, but I didn't really expect anything to come out, because we are not going to be always looking at aggression as a way to get what we want. Like we are not going to be aggressive about everything. At the end of the day, we are going to sit and have conversations that are meaningful, that even if it's NRM, even if it's FDC, whatever party, NUP, sit and have conversations. Like, we have to move away from a state of having people really having to expect violence every day, every time we have to sit and have conversations. And it affects, a local person like me who pays tax, and whatever conversations you have like are going to affect me direct. But also the other thing is, we don't want history to repeat itself. Like, we need to learn from the challenges, or maybe the challenges of what our forefathers went through as they were fighting for good governance of this country and maybe democracy. And also the other aspect of, if this is a movement that we are trying to build as a country, that if these are parties that within us and we call it a movement, let's learn, like, what are better strategies do we have in place for us to really have functioning good political parties that are not going to be fighting every day. At the end of the day, we need democracy, we need good governance, we need peace and harmony with each other, and we need to, the picture that we put out, that we have, like, as we are here having a conversation, is what we should give people. We should not have other conversations, maybe in silos, and also put out a different message to people. Like, we do not have to give Ugandans a reason to think every day nothing meaningful is going to come out of whatever conversations that we are having. And if we maybe the conversation you're having is about maybe change of leadership or whatever conversation that you're having, let's have at the back of our minds the people that we are representing, and we know that whatever we are doing is affecting people, and we just need to get organized and not really have history come back to us.
Thank you. Cooperation agreement with the Democratic Party and NRM, FDC, then UPC having its own factions here and there. I don't know what is happening in that discourse.
Now, about political parties, the multi-party dispensation that we've been struggling with in Uganda, and not only in Uganda, by the way, but in this case, we're looking at Uganda particularly. For me, I think the biggest problem that is causing all these slugfests and wars in political parties is basically the general problem we have as a country, that our systems are broken, our societies are weak, and you see, in those political parties are not run by robots. They are run by human beings that are full of interests. When you work with FDC, for example, let's say, tracing the history of the Forum for Democratic Change from the time it was founded up to now, and the party has not been in position to capture power. You go back and look at the struggle DP, for example, has been in, and it doesn't even have a glance at capturing power. You realize that in a developing country like Uganda, the activists who are in such a political party, some of them who are not disciplined enough, like the people who liberated our continent, will fall off from the struggle, basically because you know very well, Comrade Kidega, that when you are sent to a certain level of political engagements, you are not even decent enough to be employed by many organizations would not consider employing you. If, for example, if someone was a member of parliament and now is in party structures, let's say for 20 years, and they are just in a party that is struggling to fund its activities, struggling to run its functioning, they do not have a clear source of funding, leave alone the small government support that is constitutionally provided for. You realize that it will zero down to the interests of the people. That we have a society that is very demanding. You have to look after yourself. You have to do a lot of things. You find someone, you say, but I think I'm running out of time. And for me, I think that is what took away our very good role model, the chairman of DP. A person like Mao was a very brilliant man who for so long stayed in opposition and did not have a chance to contribute in the development of this country directly. In developing countries, opposition is not so strong like you would see in the Scandinavian countries or in the UK, where if you're in opposition, your issues can even be taken seriously. Here, your issues are going to be taken seriously when you have power. You are going to do something when you have power. You get the point? Whatever you are talking in opposition is hogwash and even doesn't enter people's heads. People do not even listen to you. So such a person will be locked at a point of, conflicting loyalty. He's going, I mean, do I spend all my life here struggling and then I go as a hero when I don't have what to eat? When I'm starving? So for me, I think that's why we've been losing very, very powerful people to the NRM. And now when you come to the internal wars, in political parties, it's still the question of interest. Still the question of interest.
Some accuse that there is an invisible hand of in this party.
Those ones are allegations. I do not have proof for maybe FDC going to ferry money, a few faction, a few people in maybe a particular faction in FDC going to ferry money from Nakasero or Entebbe. But it could be true, but I don't have any evidence. But for me, what I know is that interest will always break people down. And when people stay in the struggle for so long, a lot of people cannot sustain being in the struggle for so long without seeing seeing a reward. I told you, everyone you see engaging in any activity has an interest they are driving. And so you will not just be in politics for the sake of being in politics when you do not get a reward out of it. Mahatma Gandhi, the former very powerful leader in India, once said that politics is not a charity. You get the point? Because when you go in politics, you have dedicated your life to be a politician. And like I've told you, who do you think can just pick my brother, Comrade Odongauto, and just employ him in a small company and give him 2 million shillings, which is an average pay most Ugandans get? Meaning, if politics is not addressing your challenges, in your form there is no food, your children are not going to school, you lose people along the way. People will run away because the politics is not catering for their problems. Someone will say, instead of being here, I'm now 60, I'm now 55, let me just go and work with what?
The government.
Yes, I get something to put food on my table. So it is a general problem of society, but you can find a strong opposition maybe in the UK because people are going to the same good schools, same hospitals. People are using public means. Actually, you go and sit in a very comfortable bus. But that is not in this country. In this country, even our roads are crowded because we have very bogus public means of transport. You travel in a taxi and by the time you reach, you are disgusted. The next time you get some small money,
You buy a car.
think about buying a car.
Tonde car.
And those are the bigger problems we are having in this country.
True. Lynn, finally, I mean, there will be no opposition in this country by 2021, were the comments of your party chairman. Is that coming to pass?
Well, I must say that different political parties have different structures of governance they are working with. And also, but to uphold that, of recent, the president actually mentioned that some courses you don't need to go to university, to study women for 3 years or to study about children. And another thing he talked about was you don't need to study about conflict resolution. But I feel like some of the things, especially like conflict resolution, we really need to address our minds to it, because how you see people burst out themselves in public, and political spaces are grooming centers for us, the young people. Trust me, if you are a young person in FDC and you saw what happened, you're actually demoralized and you feel, actually think this is not what I believe in. So even the leaders, how they react, how they position themselves, actually contributes what they have in the political party, or how are they able to sustain it for the years to come. Ideas on financial, financial budget and financial capabilities are also a question of another day. But what I would advise, or what I would say, is that there is independence, you people. There is independence. That is why under Article 59, we have a right to vote. So, and we have seen people come up in different political parties. So, however much we might doubt, at least let's give it some reasonable little doubt that, you see, this and this is being done the right way it should be. So, within political parties, we need to work on how best we're able to sustain ourselves. But then, how do we manage our interests? You could have them, but how are you able to work hand in hand with financial sustainability of the political party. And then let's avoid blame games, because the moment you blame this one is blame. Yes, that's politics, but it tends to be so much and boring. You're blaming this one is blaming you, you're blaming that. Like, it becomes sort of a ruckus and drama that tends to leave us in space in what do we believe in, how you're not organized. And so when you see people leave your party, FDC people, to our party, NRM, you also start saying they've been given some money or they've been bought, which actually sometimes is not the case.
All right, colleagues, thank you. I don't know if I should be courteous enough to give you 10 seconds to just say goodbye. You know, when my fear is Afasha. So Afasha, challenge me and use 10 seconds to just say bye to the viewers.
Make rain fall.
Okay, thank you, Kidega.
Really?
I just wanted to say that bado kuna muda zaidi. There is more time for us to prosper and work on ourselves as Ugandans, but also Africa at large. We can, and yes, we can. It is possible. Itawezekana.
Thank you. Oh, he has met the challenge.
Yeah, I will use 5. One thing I can tell Ugandans is, you know, there is hope at the end of everything. Is we can see a bigger picture. We can treat ourselves with love and kindness. And at the end of the day, we can have discourses that are really not for one person, but also benefiting all of us as a country and also as individuals. Thank you for having me. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ladit Kidega, for the opportunity of coming back again to the spectrums of civic space, my colleagues. It's been a very meaningful conversation. I do not take for granted the chance you give to this humble kid from Dokolo district to come and talk about a few things concerning our country, but also our continent.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to be here at Civic Space.
Thank you. Yes, Council.
I would definitely conclude with saying that we can discuss this, but let's have more feasible work on ground through these discussions. And then also to leave us with a quotation that nothing is for us without us. So we must be there for each other. We must work together. We must coordinate together as a team. And then we shall achieve the best.
Fantastic. That by all means brings us to the end of this conversation. Thank you, Ndugu Afasha, Darren, my friend, my very good brother, and my sister and counsel here. Thank you for your time. Of course, to the viewers and to Rashid and the team, thank you for ensuring that our viewers get this show right on time at 2 p.m. Well, my last words are the words of the late Reverend Desmond Tutu. In whatever you do, just do right. If you are, charged with some responsibility, just do right. Just make sure you're doing it the right way. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.